Hello everyone, and welcome to After Alexander. Episode 71, From Bad to Worse. Last time, we saw the Seleucid court descend into factionalism as the East broke away. After all, Molon had rebelled against the throne, possibly because of his hatred for Hermias. This week, we'll see the fallout from Molon declaring himself independent. Molon was becoming more and more of a force to be reckoned with. Media, his native land, was well able to defend itself from Seleucid aggression coming from the west because of its deserts and mountains. Molon had also tied the other governors nearby to his side. Non-Hellenistic rulers in the region, such as Artabazanes over in Lesser Media, were all too keen to go against the Seleucids. The Macedonians and Greeks in the area were admittedly still loyal to the Seleucid house, but Molon got around this by pouring gifts onto them. He also made up letters, supposedly coming from the Seleucids, which acted to paint Antiochus III as the villain. Now, you may remember that, last week, we set up an expedition against Molon commanded by Xenon and Xenoetas. Well, they showed up in the east. However, they didn't want to engage. As such, they locked themselves away in fortresses. For his part, Molon now headed westwards. He took over the city of Apolloniatis and then moved towards Seleucia on the Tigris. Bear in mind that this is a different city to Seleucia in Pieria, which is the necropolis we've most recently been discussing in connection with the Third Syrian War's end and Princess Stratonike trying to flee there. Anyway, Molon was hampered here because the governor of Babylon, a man called Xeuxis, confiscated all the boats on the river Tigris. Seleucia was on the western bank, while Molon was on the eastern, meaning he couldn't get into the city. He therefore holed up in Ctesiphon for the winter of 222 to 221 BCE. Here he waited. The Seleucid court became tense with all Molons moving about, but our favourite minister Hermias held firm that the king shouldn't go east. So, in the summer of 221 BCE, Antiochus III would go towards Hollow Syria, while an Achaean man called Xenoetas set off east with a new army. Xenoetas was given authority over the satraps. He was delighted at this assignment and acted haughty and impulsive as a result. Xenoetas travelled to Seleucia and met up with Xeuxis. His forces were swelled by the forces of satraps called Diogenes and Pythiades. These two ruled in Susiana and the Red Sea area, respectively. Xenoetas set up camp on the western shore of the river. Deserters from Molon's armies who'd swum across the river to the royal side told him the Seleucids still had a following in the east. They said that Molon's armies were made up of Macedonians and Greeks in their lower ranks, and that these would surely turn to the Seleucid side if Xenoetas would only cross the river. Thanks to Molon being lackluster in his patrolling, Xenoetas was able to cross in the night and take up a good position in the marshlands. Molon tried to worm him out, but it didn't work because he didn't have good information on the land. Xenoetas pressed forwards to allow those in Molon's army to turn traitor. Molon then moved back towards Media. This seems to be a victory for Xenoetas. However, Xenoetas now thought that the risk had passed. He settled in Molon's camps in Ctesiphon and allowed his soldiers to live it up in the city while his horsemen pursued Molon. However, Molon now abruptly turned round and came back and caught the Seleucid forces off guard. The army were either caught while drunk or else fled and tried to cross the Tigris River to the safety of Xeuxis' camp. Most of these latter men died. After the men on the other side of the bank started panicking as well, Xeuxis himself ran away. Xenoetas' whole army was annihilated. Molon crossed the Tigris and settled in the quarters the Seleucid forces had originally occupied. This left Seleucia on the Tigris vulnerable. Molon also took over Babylon and the Red Sea area. Babylon's governor Diomedon had run away with Xeuxis. Diogenes, the governor of Susiana, went back to his satrapy to take up the defense. However, when he showed up, he found Molon already besieging his city. Molon himself left a force there and travelled on to finish conquering land north of Babylon, as well as Parapotamia and Mesopotamia. Antiochus III heard about all of this when he was already thinking of stopping the fight against Ptolemy IV. However, a continuation of the story of his reign will have to wait for episode 73. This is because we are now in 221 BCE, which means there is a notable event in Egyptian history we need to talk about. Until then, thank you all for listening. Feel free to get in touch with the show's email address for any questions or comments. Until next time, have a great week, everyone.